The stars shimmered silently above Earth, unaware of the approaching storm. In the blackness of space, an alien fleet drifted closer, massive ships, sleek and angular, cutting through the void like predatory sharks. The Vraxx had arrived. Captain Zar'val stood at the helm of his flagship, his reptilian eyes scanning the distant blue-green planet. Earth. The last of the unclaimed worlds. Every other civilization had fallen to the Vraxx. Yet Earth had lingered on the edges of their conquest, an enigma. Whispers from ancient records spoke of humans as irrational, unpredictable beings, a race that survived where others perished. Zar'val dismissed such rumors. Superstition had no place in war. "Commander, are we prepared for the first strike?" Zar'val asked, his voice a low growl. His second-in-command, a smaller Vraxx named Shkar, nodded. "The weapons are primed. Resistance is expected to be minimal." Zar'val sneered. That's what they had thought before on other worlds. The initial stages of invasion were always easy, but Earth had remained untouched for too long. There was something about humanity that made the Vraxx High Command hesitant, an unspoken fear they refused to acknowledge. "We strike now," Zar'val ordered. "End this quickly." Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Sarah Lawson stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Command, her face hardened as she watched the alien fleet approach on the monitors. The world's governments had been alerted weeks ago, when the first signs of extraterrestrial movement were detected. And now, the moment of reckoning had arrived. "Are all defenses in place?" she asked, her voice steady but grim. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Adams, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. All orbital platforms are armed, and ground forces are ready." Lawson took a deep breath. She knew their chances were slim. The Vraxx were technologically superior, far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. But Earth had one advantage: its people. Humans were survivors. They had faced extinction many times throughout history, natural disasters, wars, even their own destructive tendencies. And yet, they endured. "Then let's show them what we're made of," Lawson said, her voice filled with resolve. As the first Vraxx ships broke through the atmosphere, Earth's defenses lit up the sky. Plasma cannons fired from orbit, and missile barrages launched from the surface. The Vraxx fleet responded in kind, their energy beams scorching the clouds as they descended. The battle had begun. But something strange was happening. On the Vraxx command ship, Zar'val's confidence began to waver. His fleet should have already decimated the human defenses. Instead, his screens were filled with confusion. Ships were reporting malfunctions, weapons misfiring, and comms cutting out unexpectedly. It was as if something in Earth's atmosphere was distorting their systems. Zar'val narrowed his eyes. This wasn't in any of the projections. "Commander, something is wrong," Shkar said, his voice shaking. For the first time in his career, Zar'val felt a flicker of uncertainty. Perhaps the ancient rumors were true. Perhaps Earth was more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And for the first time, Zar'val felt a pang of fear. Captain Zar'val paced the bridge of his flagship, eyes narrowed as reports from the battlefield poured in. None of it made sense. Human resistance should have crumbled by now. Instead, Vraxx technology was failing in ways he'd never seen before. Shields flickered, targeting systems went haywire, and weapons misfired at critical moments. It wasn't sabotage, it was something else. "Commander Shkar," Zar'val barked, "I want a full analysis of the failures. Now." Shkar hesitated, clearly as baffled as his captain. "Sir, there's no explanation. Our systems are fully operational, but it's as if something is interfering with them. Something unnatural." Zar'val's reptilian eyes narrowed further. He had heard rumors of Earth's strange effects on technology, but they had always been dismissed as superstition. Yet now, watching his fleet's attacks falter, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at play than human defenses. The Vraxx had never faced anything like this before. "Sir, incoming transmission from High Command," a communications officer called out. Zar'val gritted his teeth. High Command would be expecting results, and he had none to offer. As the transmission flickered onto the screen, the stern face of Supreme Admiral Zyler appeared. "Captain Zar'val," Zyler began, his voice cold, "your fleet's failure is unacceptable. Explain yourself." Zar'val struggled to maintain his composure. "Admiral, our systems are experiencing unanticipated interference. It seems the humans. Are you suggesting these primitives have somehow outwitted the Vraxx?" Zyler interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "We are the supreme force in the galaxy. No one outwits us." Zar'val lowered his gaze. "I'm not suggesting sabotage, Admiral. There's something else, something beyond technology affecting us." Zyler's expression darkened. "Nonsense. Complete your mission. Destroy them, or I will find someone who can." As the transmission ended, Zar'val clenched his fists. He turned to Chkar. "Send out scouts. I want a full atmospheric analysis. There must be an explanation." On Earth, Commander Sarah Lawson stood in the command center, watching in cautious optimism as the alien assault continued to falter. The initial wave had been brutal, but the Vraxx seemed to be struggling now. Reports of their malfunctions were coming in from all over the globe. "Lieutenant Adams," Lawson called, "what's the status of our defenses?" Adams glanced at his screen, then turned to her with a puzzled expression. "Holding steady, ma'am. But, the enemy's attacks seem to be weakening. It's almost like they're fighting against themselves." Lawson's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Systems going haywire, weapons misfiring, it's like they're falling apart from the inside," Adams replied, clearly confused. Lawson considered this for a moment. Then, a thought occurred to her, one that sent a chill down her spine. There was a rumor circulating among her scientific advisors, something about Earth's unique influence on foreign technology. Dr. Malcolm Reed, one of the more eccentric scientists, had been pushing a theory that Earth's atmosphere, or perhaps something deeper, something psychological, had an effect on alien systems. Lawson tapped her comms. "Get me Dr. Reed." As she waited, she turned back to the screens, watching the strange chaos unfolding above. The Vraxx were powerful, far beyond humanity's capabilities. But there was something they didn't understand about Earth. Something that was breaking them down from the inside. A few moments later, Dr. Reed's voice crackled over the comms. "Commander, I believe you're seeing the effects of what I've been trying to explain." Lawson gripped the comms receiver. "What are you talking about, Doctor?" Reed's voice was calm, almost excited. "It's fear, Commander. The one thing they never anticipated, the psychological impact of humans. We're unpredictable, irrational, and it's disrupting their perfect systems. It's not just technology we're fighting with, it's the essence of who we are. They're afraid of us." Lawson's eyes widened as she began to understand. The Vraxx weren't just facing a physical enemy, they were facing something they couldn't control. Fear. And fear was tearing them apart. Captain Zar'val stood in the dim light of his private quarters, his mind racing. The failure of the invasion was undeniable, and worse, his fleet was unraveling under forces they couldn't explain. He stared at the ancient glyphs etched into the wall of his chamber, reminders of the Vraxx's glorious conquests. Yet something nagged at him, a long-buried memory that he couldn't shake. "Sir," Chkar's voice interrupted his thoughts through the comms. "The Council is awaiting you." Zar'val took a deep breath, steeling himself. This wasn't just about a failed invasion anymore, it was about the survival of the Vraxx themselves. He marched down the corridor, his mind churning with possibilities. When he entered the council room, a holographic table flickered to life, displaying the faces of the Vraxx High Command, their expressions grim. "Captain Zar'val," Supreme Admiral Zyler's voice boomed across the room, "your reports are troubling. Explain why your fleet is in disarray." Zar'val met the Admiral's gaze. "It's more than just technological failure, Admiral. Our systems are fine, but something on Earth is destabilizing us, something psychological." The council members shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. Zyler's eyes narrowed. "Psychological? Do you mean to tell us that humans have discovered a way to manipulate our minds?" "No," Zar'val replied, his voice low. "Not intentionally. But I've been reviewing our archives. There are legends, long forgotten, of a race that wielded fear as a weapon. The Vraxx once encountered them, millennia ago." An eerie silence filled the room. The council knew of the legend, an ancient tale of a species that could break the will of even the most disciplined warriors. They had no advanced weaponry, yet their enemies crumbled before them, driven mad by their presence. "You speak of myth," one of the council members muttered. "There is no proof that such a race ever existed." Zar'val's eyes hardened. "Perhaps. But what we're experiencing on Earth bears striking similarities. The humans are not attacking our systems. They are attacking our minds. Their unpredictability, their sheer will to survive, it's triggering something deep within us. A primal fear." Zyler slammed his fist on the table. "Fear? The Vraxx do not fear." "Not consciously," Zar'val countered. "But whatever is happening, it is real. Our soldiers are reporting nightmares, hallucinations, and overwhelming dread. It's spreading like a virus through the fleet. We need to retreat before it consumes us." The council fell silent again, this time with palpable tension. Zyler leaned forward, his voice a low growl. "You're suggesting we abandon the mission?" "I'm suggesting we regroup," Zar'val said carefully. "We underestimated these humans. They are not the primitive race we thought. They have something we cannot fight with conventional means." Back on Earth, Commander Lawson and Dr. Malcolm Reed stood in the war room, analyzing the latest data from the battlefield. Reed's theory was proving correct. The Vraxx were breaking down, not because of physical combat, but because of their inability to cope with the chaos humanity thrived in. "They're falling apart," Reed murmured, his eyes gleaming with fascination. "We're not just fighting their ships, Commander. We're fighting their minds." Lawson nodded, her face grim. "Then we have to push harder. We need to use this to our advantage." Reed looked at her, a dark smile creeping across his face. "If we can amplify their fear, we might not need to win this battle with weapons at all. Fear could do the job for us." Lawson turned back to the screens, watching the Vraxx forces falter. The aliens had come expecting to face a weak, primitive species. Instead, they had found something much more terrifying, an enemy that thrived in chaos, that didn't break under pressure but grew stronger. And now, the Vraxx were beginning to remember the legend. Fear was their deepest enemy, and humanity had become its embodiment. The final assault was upon them. Captain Zar'val stood frozen at the helm of his flagship, watching the chaos unfold on every screen. His fleet, once a symbol of Vraxx power, was in disarray. Ships collided, weapons misfired, and soldiers were abandoning their posts in panic. The more they tried to fight, the more fear took hold. And Zar'val could feel it, too. A deep, unshakable dread gnawed at him, growing stronger with each passing moment. "Captain." Shkar's voice crackled through the comms, frantic. "We've lost another 3 ships to internal malfunction. Morale is collapsing across the fleet." Zar'val gripped the edge of the console, his claws digging into the metal. His mind raced, searching for any tactical solution, but nothing made sense. It wasn't the humans' weapons that were destroying them, it was something far more insidious. Fear. The very essence of it had infiltrated his fleet, and it was spreading like wildfire. "We must withdraw, Captain," Shkar continued, desperation in his voice. "Before we lose everything." Zar'val turned to the comms, staring at the terrified face of his second-in-command. He had never seen such fear in a Vraxx officer before. His entire life had been about control, domination, victory. But now, staring down at the chaos, Zar'val realized something horrifying: this was a battle they couldn't win. Not with weapons. Not with tactics. Not against humans. "Order a full retreat," Zar'val said through clenched teeth, his voice trembling. "We've lost." On Earth, Commander Lawson watched the Vraxx fleets collapse with a mix of awe and determination. They had done it. But not through brute force or superior technology. They had won because of something far more powerful: the human spirit, the will to survive, and the sheer unpredictability that terrified their enemies. "They're retreating," Lieutenant Adams said, disbelief in his voice. "They're actually retreating." Lawson didn't smile. Instead, she gave a sharp nod, her eyes focused on the tactical display. "Good. But we're not done yet." Beside her, Dr. Reed tapped furiously at his tablet, his face glowing with a dangerous excitement. "The fear is spreading through their entire network. If we amplify it now, we can break them completely. They'll never come back." Lawson hesitated for a brief moment, considering the moral weight of what they were about to do. But then she thought of the destruction the Vraxx had already wrought on countless other worlds. This was humanity's only chance to send a clear message: Earth was not to be underestimated. "Do it," she ordered. Reed's fingers flew across the controls, initiating the final phase of their psychological warfare. Across the planet, specially designed transmitters began broadcasting a concentrated signal, an amplified version of the fear the Vraxx were already experiencing. Holograms of chaos, destruction, and human defiance filled the screens of the alien ships. The sounds of Earth, unsettling, discordant, echoed through their communication channels. In space, the Vraxx fleet descended into total panic. Ships turned on each other, firing in random directions. Captains issued conflicting orders, their minds overwhelmed by terror. Some vessels activated self-destruct mechanisms, desperate to escape the nightmare. On the flagship, Zar'val watched as everything he had built unraveled before his eyes. His hands trembled as he issued the final command: retreat. Abandon Earth. The once mighty fleet of the Vraxx turned and fled, the stars swallowing them as they vanished into the darkness of space. Back on Earth, a tense silence fell over the command center. Lawson stared at the screens, watching the alien ships disappear one by one. Slowly, the tension in the room lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of victory. "We did it," Adams whispered. Lawson let out a long breath. "For now." Dr. Reed grinned, satisfied with his work. "They'll never forget this day. We've shown them the one thing they truly fear." Lawson nodded, her eyes still hard. "We showed them what it means to be human." As the last of the Vraxx fleet disappeared from the sky, Earth stood victorious, not through force of arms, but through the power of an unbreakable will. Humanity had become something the aliens could never have anticipated, the embodiment of their deepest fear. And in the silence of that victory, the world knew one truth for certain. They would never face extinction quietly.